Hi, my name is Dr. James Brouner, and I work at Kingston University in London, and I'm the course leader for the sport and exercise science programs down here, all based at undergraduate level. So we have three programs underneath that banner. So we have our main degree of sport and exercise sciences, we have sport and exercise science coaching, and sport and exercise science nutrition as well.
Nice, nice. So then obviously a hint towards analysis on this channel. So I'm just curious to find out the modules that entail analysis on those. Are they on all three or are they just on a couple? And how does that kind of look?
Okay, so the analysis really plays a role in our core program of sport and exercise science and on our sport and exercise science coaching pathway. So that's where we really see the analysis taking its mainstay. We run analysis, a very, I suppose, light touch of analysis on our first year of the program, very much linked into our coaching modules. So
Yeah.
thinking about how our students can kind of almost analyze their own coaching and analyze what's going on in their coaching sessions. So thinking about that kind of just general video feedback rather than analysis per se.
Yeah.
It's when we get into our second year of the degree, and this is a core module on both of those programs, on sport and exercise science and sport and exercise science coaching, where we really bring the analysis to the forefront. And what we do in one of our modules as the second year called Analysis in Sport and Exercise is really dive into the theory behind analysis, which is something I'm very keen on. So why feedback works and how feedback works and why video feedback is such a crucial tool in modern day sports, both at kind of a grassroots level all the way up into elite level, and how we can utilize video feedback. So think about that. And then we ask students to really think about the metrics they're looking to deliver as well. So what is the not just feedback for feedback's sake, but the meaningful feedback, the real metrics that are going to make an impact to our coaches and how we're defining those metrics and those sorts of things. And then on top of that, we go into our final year of the program. So in our top end program, to the level 6 of our program, for the sport and exercise science coaching, it's a core module for performance analysis in sport, and it's optional modules on our other program for the sport and exercise scientists. And in that module, this is where we really use in play to its fullest and really start utilizing video statistical packages in their full to really offer that directed feedback, bringing out our playlists, bringing out our clips, editing those clips with voiceover, with narration, with drawing panels and all those sorts of things to really offer something that's very, very applied, almost as much as we possibly can, trying to mirror the real world situations so our graduates will leave us having experienced what might well be happening in the real world.
Yeah, definitely. So you answered another question I had in terms of whether the modules are core as well. So that's a good thing that the students are doing them because a lot of unis are putting on more of these modules. There's even courses now that are just for analysis, which is a big difference to when I went to university.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious to ask you about the popularity and what you're seeing from a student's perspective in terms of the engagement with the students and how that's maybe changed from your time in teaching from when analysis was much newer and then obviously now it's getting more popular all the time really.
Yeah, most definitely. So I've been teaching for far too long. I'm not going to mention how many years I've been doing this, but when I very first started in looking at the performance analysis side of things, it was really niche. And I suppose really even in mainstream sports such as football, it was a really niche thing. It was very much a rugby orientated device. My first experiences was working with rugby teams and then using that experience to bring into my teaching and working with those guys. I think the explosion in what performance analysis can offer and what analysis really means to the heart and soul of a player's or an athlete's understanding of what they're doing and how to gain that feedback from a coach. And then that tool the coach can use to offer that objectivity, to offer something that is potentially more impactful for the athletes and the coaches around their coaching team than their perception. That's where we've seen that massive drive off. And obviously that's come alongside massive investment in the area in terms of the number of products available now, both from video statistical packages all the way through to our GPS units and the video tracking systems, all those sorts of things. And the diversity in that, so very much localized devices, or obviously what we'll talk about be cloud-based devices and things like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely becoming more and more popular. There's loads more students want to do it. I mean, in terms of those students and kind of getting experiences, I'm just want to ask you about how they go about doing their projects, but then also another question on the side of that is, so firstly, do you have them capture video? Do they film them? And can they also kind of work with either teams at the university or local teams? Do you have any kind of thing like that in place?
Yeah, it's just going back a slight step. So in terms of popularity, that was part of the previous thing. being core at level 5, we have our whole body of students on there, so that's quite a nice larger size module. In terms of the optionality in our final year, it's becoming more and more popular as the years go on. I think that's very much linked to something we'll probably come on to towards the end, is that employment side of things and seeing just the industry side of it, but also save that bit for the end. In terms of what our students do, for our second year modules, that larger base module with really more of a, I suppose, an introduction to that theory side and the expanding of what performance analysis really is and what it can do. A lot of our students will use commercially available footage. So they will look for streaming footage from online sources, which is generally historic because of copyright infringements and those sorts of things. So it's generally a historic view. And they will look at that type of footage for all those guys. Yeah. We also do support them in going out to collect their own footage, whether that's from a local team that they're engaged with, whether that is from our university teams, or the wider remit of sport and exercise teams and athletes that we have in the local area. In our level 6, in our final year, all of the students then have to go and get original data. So they have to go out and collect original data for themselves. So that is generally working with our sports teams, if they can, their own sports teams. Again, they can use commercial footage if they so wish, but we do have links with local clubs. So we have historically worked with clubs like Fulham, like Wimbledon AFC when they were here. We worked with Wasps when they were based in London. London Irish, we've had a big link with in the past, where our students go out and work with these teams, either at academy level or at the top end level, if they kind of progress through and gain their footage from those sources as well.
Yeah, nice. So then if you can, James, just kind of talk us through how the students would use in play. So whether they're using, like you say, commercially available footage or they've captured it themselves, what are they then kind of expected to do with that footage using in play online?
Yeah, so plus, obviously, we're coming from that very academic side of things. We've got to keep those core academic standards that we're looking to see. But obviously, as we're progressing through the program, really try to offer that enhancement in the applied aspects of things as well, that real employability skill set. Yeah. So once our students will upload the footage onto InPlay, they'll then have the opportunity to break it down and use the tagging panels to actually start coding their data out. In our second year, that is very much a coding exercise. Mm-hmm. So they're coming along with what codes they want to make, making their buttons, whether they're tagging buttons or labeling buttons, and bringing in their codes. And everything we try to do at level 5 is, I suppose, more theory orientated than practical orientated. So it all has to be very defined and really, really clear stipulations about what that button means. Yeah. So when X and Y happen on the pitch, that's the only option, is it? So that's the only thing we can do. There's going to be no cross-contamination of our data. So it's all very set. So in terms of real world, a little bit of a black and whiteness to it, as opposed to what we might see in the real world. And that's kind of their mainstay of data. So they're collecting those metrics and then analysing those metrics, either just through, depending on the style of the project, really. If it's a case study project, then it's just through the narrative of the data. If it's more of a larger scale project, then it might be through statistical analysis of the data. They might be running some non-parametric tests or parametric tests, depending on the quality of the data. When we go into our final year, the level 6s, those guys are pushing a little bit further. So part of their assessment is to actually mock up a feedback session to a coach or an athlete. Yeah. So what they're looking to do then is utilize the playlists that we use in our performance analysis software and start doing, as I mentioned earlier, the narrative over the top, the spoken voice over the top to offer more impact, the drawing panels and all those sorts of things to really highlight the key things that they consider to be those feedback points. So it's no longer just about the data, just about the metrics. It's now about the narrative journey from watching the performance, coding that performance out, and how are we feeding that back, and how can we best utilize packages like InPlay to offer that feedback journey, to streamline it and make it really clear and really direct to our coaches and athletes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that technology has helped with, but just in general, I think feedback and the communication, especially as an analyst, is something that some students will probably not realize how important that is. You know, you mentioned obviously collecting data is great, but if you can't then deliver that in a way that is concise and it delivers insights to the coaches and the players, then it's pretty, you know, it's pretty useless at that point. So yeah, it's interesting to see that you built that kind of in there. So so you guys at Kingston have been using InPlay Online for a few years now, so 3 or so years or whatever. So just curious then, James, just to kind of what would you say are the main positives of using a tool such as InPlay Online that has been for you guys?
So yeah, we've been using InPlay for quite a while. We were quite an early adopter to InPlay. And the thing that really drew me to it when I first started looking into updating our software packages and seeing what was out there. Obviously, we have the big players in the markets and those sorts of guys. But what struck me as being really important to utilize InPlay was its usability.
Yeah.
And the more time I can get my students and the applied aspects I work with as well in terms of elite sport, the more I can spend talking about the data, going through the videos and making it easy for those guys to feel it and see it and play with it, the better. If I have to spend X number of weeks teaching people where you click this button, then this button, then this button, I'm losing time with my students in terms of what they can actually do physically. So the usability of InPlay is phenomenal. It's really quick. I mean, we've done it even for open days. We've had A-level and BTEC kids coming in. Within 45 minutes, they can log into a system, load up a video, load up a tagging panel, and away they go.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal, that usability. So that was one of the big things that first drew me to it. And I think the second thing was being cloud-based.
Yeah.
Again, my own personal journey started way back when with GameBreaker. So that was obviously completely Mac-based, and you've got a localized device. And I'm going very old, so I was saving to DVDs and all sorts of things way back in the day. So that cloud-based information where you can be on any device, as long as you have an internet connection, phone, tablet, PC, Mac, and anywhere in the world, log yourself in and you can be coding and you can be sharing that data with me as the academic tutor or with the athletes that we're working with. So I do a lot of work, but with athletes who are overseas, they're all based in Norway. But I can quite happily do my work in the office, press send, and I know they pretty much instantaneously in Norway are viewing my codes and viewing my practice, which is brilliant to see. So it's those two things really, it's that usability and then that accessibility. Probably the biggest things for us.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, I think you probably started using it over the COVID times, wasn't it? When a lot of you had the same problem of students not being able to get in to these classrooms and stuff. Where typically that's what it was when I was at uni, and I spent many days wondering whether I couldn't be bothered to go in, but I had to go in because I needed the tool that was there. So it was lots of change, and it's funny when you say DVDs and they're kind of outdated, because it used to be that videotapes outdated, now DVDs have been outdated, so it's crazy. So one thing I do want to ask you then, right, to kind of wrap this up, James, is kind of advice. So you've been involved in academic for a long time, you've worked with many students, and I'd just like to get different people's perspectives on advice for people to, and it doesn't have to be an analyst, just to be for a career in sport, basically across any discipline, anything that you can kind of pass on in terms of advice.
That's a toughie. Careers in sport are historically and really are very hard to get into. You kind of have to really find your way in, which is a really cool, interesting thing. For me, it's engagement. I think if you're currently on an undergrad program, or you're looking to do an undergrad program and performance analysis be part of it, or physiology or biomechanics, whichever pathway you decide to go down, engage in that academic journey. Not just in terms of your lectures and seminars and assignments, but try to engage in that fuller context so that you can really draw as much information into your personal portfolio as you possibly can. Lean on the academics, lean on your peers to learn from multi-sports. And one big thing for that, and we see it a lot, I'm sure we're not alone in this, is don't try to pigeonhole yourself into a sport.
Yeah.
If you love football and football's your life and all you want to do is go and work in football, well, then your job market goes from this to this.
Yeah, definitely.
Be more open. Engage in other sports, engage in knowledge of other sports and other entities, and you'll be surprised on where that can take you. And that might lead you into your dream jobs in football via a different measure, via a different metric, via a different way. So that's really interesting. And then part of that is engaging with the wider community as well. If you can, again, with cost of living and everything else, if you can afford to do some voluntary work at a local club, do. Just that little bit of experience, and at the kind of more towards a grassroots level, you're going to get more exposure to more different dyads within that relationship. So you're not just going to be, I'm going to go and work with the academy at a Premier League football club, and you're going to be standing on sidelines, filming in the cold. That's your job.
Yeah.
If you're working with that close to grassroots, you're going to be filming, coding, feeding back, discussing. You're much more part of that journey, and that richness that will give your CV and your time is absolutely phenomenal. And you can bring that into the environment when you start looking for roles post-graduation, placements during your course of your degree, anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Like just because it's a bigger name team does not mean it's a better experience for you to learn. And you mentioned kind of the grassroots clubs, but I mean every university has books teams that play
Yeah,
every Wednesday, so there's not really any excuse for a student to not be able to gain a club because there's loads of them clubs and they'll be more than happy for you to help out filming and coding the games. I'm sure. So
yeah,
if any students watching this, then and there's every single sport you can think of when it comes to books as well. So there really is something for everyone.
yeah.
Perfect. No, that's brilliant, James. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much for sharing those kind of experiences. We'll kind of wrap it up here, but yeah, you take care and I'll catch you soon.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks a lot, Chris. Take care.